Top 10 gemstones created by humans, but sold as natural. They sparkle. They're cut, polished, and set into rings, necklaces, and heirlooms, marketed as rare natural treasures of the earth. However, in many cases, no one ever checks. Across the global jewelry trade, millions of stones are sold as rubies, sapphires, or emeralds, presented as natural, priced as natural, when in fact, they were never mined at all. They were made. In this documentary, we investigate 10 gemstones that were created entirely by human hands. Some were pulled from furnaces, others were grown in labs. All of them were introduced into the market under one powerful assumption, that they were natural. You'll see how each was engineered, how it passed for real, and how it quietly reshaped what the world believes a gemstone truly is. Some ended up in museum collections, others in wedding sets, and one of them might still be in yours. Don't forget to press and hold that like button, leave a comment, and hit subscribe before we begin. Ranked 10th, YAG, the diamond that never came from Earth. The ring looked perfect under the showroom light, a brilliant stone cut with precision held in 4 prongs of gold. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't diamond priced either. For a generation of American buyers in the 1970s, that was enough. The tag didn't say diamond, but it didn't say YAG either. YAG, or yttrium aluminum garnet, wasn't mined. It was grown, pulled from a melt of yttrium oxide and aluminum oxide in a controlled laboratory furnace using the Czochralski method, the same technique used in high-precision optics and laser equipment. First synthesized in the 1960s, YAG wasn't created to mimic nature. It was designed for performance, stability, transparency, and durability under pressure. But by the early 1970s, it found an entirely different audience. Faced with rising diamond prices, the jewelry industry sought alternatives. Cubic zirconia had not yet taken over the market, and moissanite wouldn't appear for another 2 decades. YAG, with a refractive index of 1.83 and dispersion close enough to suggest fire, became the synthetic of choice. Cut correctly, it sparkled like a diamond, but cost a fraction of the price. To an untrained eye and under department store lighting, it was nearly indistinguishable. The problem wasn't that YAG existed, it was that it was ineffective. The problem was how it was sold. Tens of thousands of pieces were marketed during the 1970s and early 1980s as alternative diamond, or left unlabeled. Trade names like diamondette or created brilliance replaced technical disclosure. Salespeople were trained to say little, and many buyers, especially for engagement rings, never knew they weren't getting a natural gem. YAG entered wedding ceremonies, family heirlooms, and inheritance boxes. It became part of American jewelry culture, not as a lie, but as an omission. Fast forward to today, estate appraisers across the country continue to test stones brought in by adult children who inherited what they believed were diamonds. The results are routine. The refractive index is too low, specific gravity is inconsistent, and birefringence is absent. The diagnosis is precise. It's YAG. In terms of durability, YAG isn't a poor performer. It measures 8.25 on the Mohs scale, hard enough to resist scratching in daily wear, but far more brittle than diamond. It can chip, cloud, and yellow over time, especially if exposed to heat during jewelry repair. Many of these older rings now show the signs of a life worn hard, and the gem, once flawless, now tells a more complicated story. Yet even now, YAG has no standard in disclosure. It is not classified as imitation. It is not labeled as synthetic diamond. It simply exists. An artificial crystal that, for a moment in jewelry history, filled a demand the natural world couldn't. It isn't valuable on the resale market. It isn't rare, but it remains in circulation, quietly present in drawers, safety boxes, and pawn shops. A stone made entirely by human hands, once trusted to represent forever. Ranked 9th, Gilson Opal, when synthetic became the standard. At a street fair in Arizona, a table glitters under the desert sun. Rings, pendants, earrings, each filled with swirling patches of color. Electric green, deep violet, and streaks of crimson that flash with the slightest movement. The seller smiles, holding up a pendant. Real Australian opal, they say. Hand set in sterling, a steal at $40. The colors are real, but the origin isn't. The stone is Gilson Opal, a lab-grown material created in France in 1974 by Pierre Gilson, a chemist who specialized in recreating gemstones through precipitation chemistry. His goal was transparent, to develop a synthetic opal that mimicked the internal structure of natural silica spheres, arranged in periodic arrays that diffract light. He succeeded. Gilson Opal produces a genuine play of color, not a painted surface, not a foil. It's a technical marvel, and it was never meant to deceive. But like many materials that leave the lab and enter commerce, Gilson Opal became a different story outside the research papers. By the 1980s, jewelry wholesalers began to import it under vague labels, such as opal triplet, synthetic opal, or simply opal. Retailers, especially at the lower end of the market, dropped the qualifiers. On online platforms and gift shops, the word Gilson disappeared altogether. The price point was attractive, the fire was intense, and buyers rarely requested certificates. Today, Gilson Opal has become the dominant form of opal in costume jewelry worldwide. It accounts for tens of millions of units sold annually. It is featured in wedding rings, necklaces, and artisan pieces on sites like Etsy and TikTok storefronts. Most buyers will never know they've purchased a lab-grown gem because there's no requirement to disclose it and no enforcement when sellers fail to do so. Even professionals are occasionally misled. Gilson Opal's visual characteristics are nearly indistinguishable from Ethiopian hydrophane opal to the untrained eye. Under magnification, however, the patterns are too perfect, a snakeskin or chicken wire matrix that betrays its artificial precision. Its weight, moisture behavior, and surface luster also differ, but without tools or testing, none of that matters. What makes Gilson Opal unique among synthetics is not how it mimics reality, but how seamlessly it has replaced it in specific market tiers. In the world of mass-market jewelry, Gilson isn't the alternative anymore. It's the default. And the silence surrounding it isn't accidental. It's structural. Few regulations require disclosure. Fewer consumers demand it. In an economy built on presentation, stones like Gilson Opal fulfill the visual promise at a fraction of the cost. And that for many sellers is all that matters. Ranked 8th, synthetic Spinel, the stone that everyone thought was something else. The appraisal folder is filled with papers, estate filings, bank records, and itemized lists of jewelry. Among them, a small ring with a vivid blue stone, worn thin at the shank, but the gem still bright, still clean. The client leans forward. It's sapphire, right? My mother wore it in every family photo. The answer comes quietly. It's not sapphire. It's synthetic Spinel, created in a furnace, likely between 1930 and 1950, using a method perfected decades earlier. Spinel, as a natural gemstone, has been revered for centuries. However, its synthetic counterpart took shape through flame fusion, a process invented in 1902 and applied commercially to Spinel by 1909. The technique involved dripping finely controlled oxides into a blazing flame, forming a crystal bead that cooled into a rough boule. The results were dazzling, clean, colorful, durable stones in red, blue, pink, and green. They weren't marketed as synthetic Spinel. They were sold as ruby, sapphire, birthstones, placed into mass-produced rings, often for graduations or birthdays. The cost was low, the appearance luxurious, and few consumers knew the difference. By the 1940s, synthetic Spinel had become the dominant material in American department store jewelry. Tens of thousands of pieces were sold each year without documentation, labels, or a legal obligation to disclose their origin. The stones entered family traditions. They were gifted, worn, passed on, and assumed to be natural. From a technical standpoint, synthetic Spinel is a stable, attractive, and harmless material. Its hardness, about 8 on the Mohs scale, makes it suitable for daily wear. It doesn't cloud easily. It resists most acids. But it also has one silent flaw. It lacks scarcity, and with it, resale value. Today, appraisers still encounter these pieces. Most arrive without paperwork. They aren't counterfeits. No one forged a certificate. But for many clients, the truth carries weight. A stone thought to be worth thousands may be worth under $50. The gem remains unchanged. Only the story around it collapses. What makes synthetic Spinel unique in this list is not its deception, but its permanence without provenance. No one meant to lie. The information was just never shared. Generations wore it believing in a value that was never assigned and never verified. In vaults, drawers, and heirloom boxes, the stones remain. Unlabeled, unchallenged, brilliant. Ranked 7th, Cobalt Glass, the sapphire that was never a stone. It cost $29.99. The listing describes the item as blue sapphire, accompanied by words such as elegant, handcrafted, and perfect for gifts. The photo shows a deep blue center stone set in silver, glowing softly against a white background. There is no certificate, there is no mineral origin, but there is a promise, genuine look, natural beauty. The customer clicks buy. What arrives isn't a gemstone, it's cobalt-colored glass, an artificial material composed of silicate fused with cobalt oxide, engineered to imitate the deep blues of natural sapphire. There's no crystalline structure, no pleochroism, no birefringence. What it offers is color and nothing else. Cobalt glass isn't new. It has existed for centuries, adorning goblets, stained glass windows, and costume jewelry since ancient times. But its use as a sapphire substitute accelerated in the 20th century, when jewelry demand outpaced access to natural gems. As mining struggled to meet global appetite, manufacturers leaned on color, and customers stopped asking questions. By the 1950s, glass gems flooded American department stores. Rings labeled Blue Stone or September Birthstone are sold in bulk, boxed in velvet with no gemological disclosure. Few buyers had the tools to test them, even fewer had reason to doubt them. But cobalt glass, for all its beauty, is fragile. With a Mohs hardness of around 5 to 6, it scratches easily, chips under pressure, and shows abrasion with wear. Unlike sapphire, which holds polish for generations, glass loses its luster within years, and once scratched or cracked, it cannot be repaired, only replaced. Today, these stones persist. In online marketplaces and souvenir shops, cobalt glass is still sold under the name Blue Sapphire, often priced between $10 and $100. Sellers use phrases like lab-created, enhanced, or ethically sourced, terms that, while technically not false, blur the line between appearance and authenticity. Under magnification, the deception becomes clear. Bubbles locked within, curved flow lines from molten cooling, a lack of crystal boundaries. All signs that this stone was never mined, never formed over millions of years, and never touched by geologic pressure. But for many buyers, that inspection never happens. The box remains closed. The ring gets worn. The story continues. Cobalt-colored glass doesn't carry the economic weight of other synthetics. It isn't sold in auctions or vaults, but its reach is broader than most. It sits on fingers, wrists, and necks across the world. A global inventory of stones that were never stones. Not illegal, not rare, not real, but present. Ranked 6th, cubic zirconia, the stone sold by illusion. Indistinguishable from diamond. Flawless brilliance. Lab perfection. That's the ad copy. It appears across thousands of product listings, from e-commerce giants to bridal catalogs. The price? $39.99. The stone? Labeled as engineered diamond, white crystal, or simply stone. The footnotes, if they exist, mention cubic zirconia. Cubic zirconia, or CZ, is not a diamond, nor a mineral in nature. It is a synthetic compound of zirconium dioxide, stabilized in a cubic crystal structure through the addition of rare earth oxides. Developed for optical ceramics in 1937, CZ was weaponized for jewelry by Soviet scientists in 1976, using a method known as skull melting, heating zirconium above 2,700 degrees Celsius in a crucible that cools from the outside in. What emerged was a colorless, cuttable, and transparent substance. It was also cheap. For under $5 a carat, manufacturers could mass-produce gem-quality crystals that to the casual eye resembled diamonds. Jewelry brands noticed. So did marketers. By the 1980s, cubic zirconia entered rings, bracelets, watches, and pendants worldwide. It was placed into 18-karat gold, sterling silver, and base metals alike. For many buyers, there was no distinction between the two. Store clerks used phrases like, just as brilliant, impossible to tell, and only you'll know. Few explained that cubic zirconia and diamond have nothing in common beyond appearance. Technically, the differences are apparent. Cubic zirconia has a lower refractive index, lower hardness, higher density, and double the dispersion, which causes its fire to appear overly rainbow-like under bright light. It also lacks thermal conductivity, meaning any basic diamond tester will flag it instantly. However, without equipment or education, few buyers were tested. Cubic zirconia is not rare. It is not valuable. It is not regulated. Yet its success reshaped an entire industry. Engagement rings sold in department stores often featured CZ by default. Custom jewelers adopted it for clients who wanted the look of luxury without the cost. And resale markets became flooded with stones that look expensive, but aren't, and never were. Today, cubic zirconia continues to dominate low-cost jewelry and mass-market accessories. Despite widespread awareness, it is still sold under various names, including lab diamond, diamond-like, or eco-gem. In live stream auctions, it is displayed beside real diamonds, never touching, but visually adjacent. The implication is powerful and misleading. The stone itself performs well for short-term wear, but over time, cubic zirconia scratches, it loses luster, it clouds under skin oils and household abrasives. Its shelf life is visual, not structural. There is no scandal in cubic zirconia, no fraud, no black market, just a long-standing marketing decision to sell illusion as identity. It was never a crime, just a convention, one that still holds. Ranked 5th, segment title, Moissanite, the stone everyone mistook for something else. Is it a lab diamond? That's the most common question. Whispered over showroom counters, typed into search bars, and asked during live streams. The answer is no. However, the story is more complex than that. Moissanite is not diamond. It is not a variant nor a derivative. It is silicon carbide, a different compound, a distinct crystal with a different origin. In nature, it exists only in trace amounts, primarily found in meteorites. The sample that was named came from a crater in Arizona, discovered by chemist Henri Moissan in 1893. For nearly a century, moissanite remained a mineral curiosity, too rare to cut, too small to set. Then in the 1990s, American labs discovered a way to cultivate it, a significant, flawless, and affordable process. The company Charles & Colvard patented the process, launching moissanite into the jewelry market as a luxury substitute. Something clear, durable, and dramatically brilliant. From a physical standpoint, moissanite performs well. It scores 9.25 on the Mohs scale, resists scratches, and reflects light with a dispersion more than twice that of diamond. Under direct light, it sparkles with colored fire, red, green, yellow, that exceeds the white flash of diamond. But that brilliance has a cost. Under casual inspection, moissanite looks too good, too busy, too rainbow, and for those trained to see it, unmistakable. The confusion didn't come from the stone. It came from the messaging. Moissanite was marketed not just as a diamond alternative, but as something morally superior. Conflict-free, lab-made, responsible luxury. In the process, many consumers equated it with synthetic diamond, a completely different material that shares a carbon structure with natural diamond. This confusion persists. On many online platforms, moissanite is listed as lab diamond or simply white gem. Some sellers disclose their name only in footnotes or technical sheets. Others skip the name altogether, allowing price and appearance to imply a truth that isn't there. Gemologists can identify moissanite in seconds, using thermal or electrical conductivity tests. But most buyers never test. They see brilliance. They read words like flawless, lab-created, and sustainable. The leap from lab stone to lab diamond is subtle and effective. Unlike cubic zirconia, moissanite holds up. It stays clear. It doesn't scratch easily. It can last decades, but it will never be a diamond. It was never intended to be. It has a name, a structure, a story, and a confusion built not on lies, but on omission. When a material is repeatedly mislabeled, it doesn't change the material. It changes the market. Ranked fourth, flame fusion. Ruby, the most common gem that never came from Earth. A military badge from 1944. Gold plating dulled by time. 2 laurel leaves engraved on either side. And at the center, a round blood-red stone. The record says it's ruby. The owner believed it, so did his children, and so did the jeweler who appraised it, until the test was run. The stone isn't natural, it never was. It's a flame fusion ruby, grown in a laboratory furnace, not mined from the ground. The process dates back to 1902, when French chemist Auguste Verneuil introduced the world's first method for synthesizing gemstones. Using powdered aluminum oxide mixed with chromium, melted in an oxyhydrogen flame, Verneuil created crystals that mimic the chemical and optical properties of natural ruby at a fraction of the cost. The technology spread quickly. By the 1910s, thousands of pieces of jewelry featured flame fusion rubies. In rings, brooches, clasp pins, military insignias, and engagement bands. They were sold as rubies. They looked like rubies, and in many cases, they were never described as anything else. Unlike cubic zirconia or glass, flame fusion ruby is not a simulation. It is chemically identical to natural ruby, aluminum oxide with trace chromium. What separates it is time and pressure. Natural ruby forms over millions of years under specific geological conditions. Flame fusion ruby takes a few hours in a lab. The visual differences are subtle. Under magnification, flame fusion rubies often display curved growth lines and gas bubbles, which are telltale signs of synthetic formation. But without training or equipment, few can tell. And for most of the 20th century, no one checked. This created a phenomenon rarely discussed. A generation of synthetic stones believed to be natural, embedded in family legacies, worn with pride, and passed down with false assumptions of rarity. Today, gemological labs routinely receive heirlooms labeled as antique ruby, only to determine that the stones were lab-grown decades earlier. The monetary value plummets, from thousands to perhaps $50. But the emotional confusion is harder to resolve. There was no fraud. The stones were sold as rubies, and they were, just not in the geological sense. Flame fusion rubies are still manufactured today. They're found in fashion jewelry, student rings, costume pieces, and online auctions. They remain chemically legitimate, but commercially distinct. In gemology, naming matters. Ruby is a category rooted not only in chemistry, but in origin. Without that origin, the material changes. Its structure holds, its color shines, but its story no longer matches the name it's been given. And for many pieces passed down through generations, that story was never corrected, only repeated. Ranked third, Hydrothermal Emerald. The imitation that nearly passed every test. 2 green stones sit under the lens. Both are beryl. Both show hexagonal crystal habits. Both display the telltale inclusions. Veils, tubes, jardin. The lab tech pauses. From across the counter, the client asks the question, is it real? Technically, yes, but not in the way they expected. Hydrothermal emerald is chemically identical to natural emerald, a green variety of beryl colored by chromium or vanadium. It is grown inside high-pressure autoclaves that mimic the geothermal conditions under which genuine emeralds form. Over weeks, in a superheated solution of silicates and dopants, crystals emerge, structured, stable, and gem quality. The process was perfected in the mid-20th century, Chatham, Inamori, Lechleitner, and Tyrus. Each brought innovations that refined the clarity, size, and color control of synthetic emeralds. These stones were not fakes, they were engineered with precision, and they fooled nearly everyone. Hydrothermal emeralds contain growth lines, inclusions, and structural zoning that mirror nature so closely, they pass many visual tests. Without advanced equipment, such as spectroscopy, UV response, or magnification of fluid inclusions, they are nearly impossible to distinguish. This closeness created an industry dilemma. Hydrothermal emeralds entered the jewelry market through two paths. At the high end, they were disclosed, lab-grown emeralds, often sold at a fraction of the natural price, backed by certification. However, in the unregulated sector, including local shops, flea markets, and live stream auctions, they often arrived unlabeled, or worse, mislabeled. Sellers called them natural Colombian or Zambian, terms that command premium prices. Buyers rarely questioned it. Even when asked, sellers often blurred the distinction. It's real emerald, just made in a lab, which from a chemical standpoint is true, but from a gemological and market perspective, it's a separation that changes everything. In natural emerald, rarity and origin define value. In hydrothermal emerald, predictability and control define cost. Two stones may look the same, but one formed over millions of years under geological pressure, while the other was formed in a metal cylinder within 30 days. This doesn't make hydrothermal emerald worthless. Its durability and beauty are real, but the assumption that it's natural and therefore valuable is incorrect. Today, labs continue to receive stones submitted as heirlooms, gifts, or investments. Some turn out to be hydrothermal, having been sold as natural for decades. Others are recent purchases, made online, shipped with non-GIA certificates, and believed to be rare. They're not dangerous. They're not illegal. They're just misunderstood. In gemology, similarity isn't the same as sameness. And the difference between emerald and hydrothermal emerald often lies in whether someone bothered to ask. Ranked second, lead glass-filled ruby, the stone that shattered its illusion. The jeweler applies heat to a ring, a standard torch flame, a routine used for resizing. The metal adjusts, the setting softens. Then suddenly, the ruby fractures, not in one place but across its surface, cracking like a windshield under stress. Seconds later, parts of it melt, revealing soft glass that pools along the bench. This wasn't a ruby in the traditional sense. It was a lead glass-filled composite made from low-grade ruby fragments fused with colored glass. Engineered to look whole, but never meant to survive heat, pressure, or time. The base material is corundum, genuine ruby. However, the quality is low, as it is full of fissures, cavities, and structural flaws. Under normal conditions, it would be rejected for fine jewelry, but with modern enhancement techniques, these stones are submerged in acid, cleaned, and injected with lead-rich glass under high heat. The process fills the voids, smooths the surface, and intensifies the color. The result? A stone that looks at first glance like premium Burmese or African ruby, vivid, transparent, well cut. In markets where certification is absent or ignored, it becomes indistinguishable to the average eye. The price difference is extreme. A natural ruby of this appearance might command thousands. A lead glass-filled ruby? Sometimes under $100. Yet in display cases, both may sit side by side. One is priced with an explanation, the other with silence. Under magnification, the signs are clear. Gas bubbles trapped in glass, unnatural flow lines, and a distinctive flash effect when rotated. But few buyers request microscope analysis. And sellers, especially in fast turnover environments, such as street markets, live stream auctions, and bulk retail, rarely volunteer the truth. The durability is where illusion fails. These stones can shatter during basic repair. They react poorly to ultrasonic cleaners, household chemicals, and even skin oil over time. Unlike genuine rubies, which withstand centuries of wear, glass-filled rubies have a lifespan measured in months or years, not decades. Yet the material persists because it solves a market problem. The demand for ruby far exceeds the supply of untreated gems. Lead glass filling transforms reject material into saleable inventory. It turns waste into profit. Regulations exist. Major labs such as GIA, SSEF, and Gubilin label these as composite ruby or ruby glass filled. However, outside formal channels, disclosures often disappear. Boxes are marked natural ruby. Certificates are skipped. Consumers assume the stone looks like a ruby. It's sold as ruby. However, it doesn't behave like ruby. And when it breaks, it doesn't break like stone. It fractures like what it partially is, glass is. In first place, beryllium-treated sapphire, the stone rewritten from the inside out. On the surface, the gem is flawless. A delicate mix of orange and pink, known in trade as padparachcha, is one of the rarest and most coveted sapphire colors in the world. The cut is precise, the clarity is high, the price tag is 5 figures. And yet, under the lens of laser ablation inductively coupled plasma mass spectrometry, its story collapses. This stone did not come from Sri Lanka. It came from a furnace. Beryllium-treated sapphire begins as something natural, often a pale, milky corundum, low in value, high in imperfections. It is subjected to extreme heat, exceeding 1800 degrees Celsius, in a controlled environment where beryllium vapor is introduced. Over hours or days, the B atoms penetrate the sapphire's crystalline lattice, not just at the surface, but deep inside, altering its color from within. What was once dull and unsellable becomes vibrant, desirable, deceptive. This isn't a coating. It's not a film or dye. The treatment doesn't sit on the outside. It lives inside the atomic structure, diffusing across the lattice planes, invisible to the human eye, and indistinguishable under standard gemological magnification. Until 2002, no one was aware of it. Dozens, possibly thousands of these stones entered the global market throughout the 1990s. They passed visual inspection. They passed heat-only declarations. They fooled auction houses, luxury retailers, and certification labs alike. Some were sold as natural sapphire. Others are unheated. Their price reflected scarcity. Their story is false. It took years of forensic spectroscopy to uncover the truth. The presence of B, a light, mobile, and hard-to-detect element, requires advanced analysis. No simple microscope, no UV light, no hardness test can confirm it. Only elemental breakdown at the atomic level reveals what was done. And even then, the industry response was fractured. Disclosure regulations vary by country, laboratory, and market segment. Some certifications list beryllium-treated, others say heated. Many say nothing at all. Sellers capitalize on this ambiguity, offering stones that appear natural, priced accordingly, with no mention of the treatment that made them. The damage isn't just monetary, it's definitional. A natural padparachcha sapphire is among the rarest stones on Earth, found in limited deposits that have formed over millions of years. A beryllium-treated sapphire is a manufactured interpretation, formed in weeks, crafted through human intervention, and indistinguishable without high-level testing. One is geological, the other chemical. They share color. They share hardness. However, they do not share a common origin. And in gemology, origin is not a suggestion, it is identity. They were never hidden, never illegal, never labeled as fake. Each of these stones was placed into the market with full awareness by sellers, manufacturers, and sometimes entire industries. What blurred the line wasn't the technology, it was the people. It was the silence. From flame fusion rubies to hydrothermal emeralds, from moissanite to lead glass composites, these gemstones were not sold with lies. They were sold with omission. And in a market where most buyers never ask the right questions, omission is often enough. The difference between natural and artificial isn't always visible. But in gemology, it's the difference between what holds value and what holds light. Let us know which one resonates with you in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.